I've been doing some research around the clean energy sector, and there are 298,000 jobs that Canadians are doing today in this sector, and it's growing. So we think this is a very interesting area for you to gain some information and knowledge about. I'd like to talk about the process first. We have some prepared questions that we're going to ask our panel, and we invite you to write down some of your questions in the little box you will see on the screen that says, type your question. It's going to be pretty easy. We're unable to hear or see you, so it's important that you use the box, and depending on the time and the number of questions we get, we may not get through all of the questions, and so I want to apologize beforehand, just in case we miss your question. We are going to have a draw for a gift card at the end of this session, and so we will be asking you a question, and you will have heard the answer during the discussions. A poll will come up near the end, and we will ask you to put in your answer, your name, and your email. And then we will let the lucky winner know after we finish the event. Well, we had the introductions. We've seen the bios on the PowerPoint that was running prior to our start of this, and we will run it once again at the end. So our panelists' bios and information about their company will be available for you. We ask that you actually link in with them rather than getting in touch with us and asking for their contact information. And remember, as a career coach, the advice I like to give is that you need to let them know where you met them or why you want to get in touch with them. That's always a really great way to stand out from the hundreds, perhaps thousands, of requests they get over the years. Now, one of our panelists, Remi Watts, is not available today. He's had a very last-minute change to his schedule, but we are very pleased to have 3 panelists attend and share their information and their time with us. So our first panelist, Evan Wilson, he was a top 40 under 40 recipient in 2015, and he previously worked as a consultant where one of his clients was Renewable Energy Association. He really developed an interest in this area through that association, and when a position came available for his skills that he had, he jumped at the opportunity to move into this sector. It took 4 years, but obviously he's a very patient person. Welcome, Evan, and thank you for coming. Our next panelist is Alison Thompson. She is the co-founder and majority owner of Borealis GeoPower. She grew up in Pickering, Ontario, which was about an hour away from where I grew up, which is home to 8 nuclear reactors. Alison always thought that she would someday be a nuclear engineer. Her role in the energy field today is not far off that, as geothermal is the natural heat steam from the earth that can be transferred into energy. I visited Iceland many times, and so I'm really curious and excited to hear more about this type of energy. Thank you, Alison, for attending and sharing your expertise with us. And last but not least, Dr. Nashed Nassar. He's enjoyed a full career at U of C. I counted 28 different awards he's received over his academic career. They've included everything from academic achievement to outstanding teacher to great supervisor awards. Clearly, Dr. Nassar is a well-rounded professional. So let's begin with our first question. It's a general question, but I think it's a question that everyone would like to know. What is your best advice for someone wanting to move into this sector? And I'd like to start with Evan.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Lynn, and thanks for Talent Pool for having me. I think that the number one piece of advice that I would have for entering into the sector is, especially here in Alberta, where there are a lot of people with a lot of experience that is transferable across different parts of the energy sector is to really understand what your skills and experience are, and look for a role that can fit that kind of experience that you have. I know that sounds simple, but I think that it's particularly important to remind people of, because there is this sense, I think, sometimes that the clean energy sector or the renewable energy sector is something that is new, and that it is a different sector than the traditional energy sector that we have here in the province. But the reality is there is a lot of experience, there's a lot of training, and there is a lot of work that folks have done that can transfer over really cleanly, without requiring anything new in the form of training or expertise. Not to say that you should shy away from that, but more just be aware of what your strengths are, be aware of what your experience is, and be aware that there is transferable work. And just to kickstart this, I hope I'm not giving it away too quickly, but Canadian Renewable Energy Association, previously, I worked for the Wind Energy Association, and we merged with the Solar Industries Association. Both CanWIA and CanSIA had done supply chain studies that look into the job skills that are transferable. So I would say take a look at those. They're on the website for CanWIA and CanSIA. They're a Google search away, and they can tell you what kind of jobs are required in both sectors. And you can get an idea of what those what those possibilities are based on the work that you're currently doing or that you were formerly doing.
Thank you. Excellent. Alison, do you have anything to add?
Sure, and I'm speaking today both from Borealis GeoPower and, like Evan was mentioning, the Renewable Associations. I'm also the chair of the Canadian Geothermal Energy Association, or CanGEA. I think maybe the first thing to encourage people is, before you get to applying for a job, or even at the networking part, I'd like to see candidates who are already involved in the industry. So while we all believe there is an extremely high transferability between both the mining and the oil and gas industry into geothermal energy production and the management, it's difficult to see that passion and sincerity in candidates who have not yet already been a member of an association like the ones that everyone was discussing, or CanGEA, going to a conference, participating constructively as a thought leader on LinkedIn, even something as passive of joining that conversation on LinkedIn. Let us as the hiring group see that you're truly interested. Those of us who work in the industry, I would say we're very passionate. We don't call ourselves having jobs. If anything, I would call what we do is a vocation. It's been a long and kind of uphill road to get where we are now, and I think we're going to keep going higher. But we want to also work with team members who have that sincerity and passion and pre-existing involvement, even at the smallest or passive levels.
Excellent. Thank you. Really, really good tips. Appreciate that. Dr. Nazar, your advice?
Yeah, I think you guys have mentioned most of the tips needed, but I would add something here is, for those professionals that we were working on, oil and gas industry, you guys have very good assets here in terms of the skills that you gain. But if you want to go and switch culture, let me use this word, I think you need to understand where the industry, is heading, and what the renewable energy is needed. You have gained a lot of skill during your work in oil and gas industry. I'm talking about especially for the engineers. It's multidisciplinary. So my advice for you, be comfortable with the new technology and be innovative. You have gained a lot of experience that been accumulated in whether designing a new process or implementing a new material, whether it's been in the mining industry or in the recovery of the oil. This process that you gain still can be transferred to the renewable energy with any kind. But remember that it is a technology that is needed. Okay, So you can, capitalize on that. You can capitalize on your skill that you have, but that doesn't mean you cannot be taking some development courses, okay, to add value for, your experience that you have gained in the industry. Okay.
Thank you. You kind of led me into my next question, which is what kind of education or training is needed to move into this field? And I realize that's a huge question because there's a variety of different positions, but is there any advice that you can give around how people can upskill to be more effective?
Okay. There is a lot of training program, and workshops, okay, that we developed at the University of Calgary here that focus on energy and the environment, okay, with more on sustainable energy, okay, those that has to do with the solar, like renewable energy. I think the university, especially at the Faculty of Engineering, they have issued a number of certificates where the students they can get a diploma or a degree within a year on renewable energy related field. Okay, those skills, or it is a complementary of those, especially that they have an engineering or non-engineering background. Okay, at the same time, I'm not saying here I don't want to advertise for the University of Calgary, but still there are lots of book clubs or gym classes actually that focus on these new technologies that you can join. In addition of some community work workspaces that they also foster the transition or the addition of a new technology. Actually, I'm going to be talking about this, especially when we're talking about the renewable energy and the current energy that we're using today. I don't want to be looking at the renewable energy as an alternative energy. It is, a complementary energy because we need all of the type of energy.
Right.
So these are the things that we need to look at in terms of, the training courses or the workshops or the diploma that you are targeting. Don't look at it as, we are abandoning, the fossil-based energy. And the contrary, we're going to be using all the type of energy. So capitalize on the skill that you have gained now. You might be using it tomorrow. Okay, so don't think that you're going to be abandoning what you have now or what you gain now, and you want to start from scratch. No, build up on it.
Thank you. Great advice. And I think that's really helpful for us to hear that you don't always have to start fresh when you're moving in. And so,
Yeah.
Evan, you had something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just want to add too. So, for some of the more specific skills that are related to wind and solar, I would also encourage people to take a look at Medicine Hat College has a solar technicians program, and as well, the Lethbridge College has a wind technicians program. So, I'm more familiar with the Lethbridge College option, but you can get your a technical certification for working in a wind facility, as well as hours towards your ticket as an electrician as well. So they tried to merge those two programs. But specifically at Lethbridge College, it's not only the electrical side, but it's also about how you work in confined spaces. It's how you do, and I don't mean to turn off people with a fear of heights here, but it's also how to do high-level rescues. We have like a 4-story
Yes.
lab where part of it is you hang from the top on a cord and help people make their way back up to the top of the room. So hopefully that doesn't scare people. They also have like a virtual reality version of that, so maybe that can help be training wheels. But then the same goes for Medicine Hat, perhaps for people that aren't scared of heights. You're only going rooftop height rather than 125 meters in the air. But there's also the option there to pair that with electrical ticket and electrical trades training, with a specialty in the requirements of solar installation as well. So those are two pretty specific programs. Also, the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology, Southern Alberta Institute of Technology have alternative energy diploma programs as well. And where they are not as specifically about two core technologies like that, like your wind specific and your solar specific. Also, for folks who are located in Calgary or located in Edmonton, those are a good place to take a look for programs for specifically the technical training as well.
That's it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Alison, do you have anything to add?
Sure. I think it's really important to convey that it's not just the technical skills. So, for example, I've been in the industry for about 20 years. I'm a chemical engineer. I also have a business degree. I have yet to find a job that is in the oil and gas industry that is not 100% transferable to the geothermal industry. And this isn't just about the chemical engineering or the geologist or the geophysicist. This is the accounting, the bookkeeping, the legal, the administration. Now artificial intelligence and big data. I just want to keep encouraging everybody that our supply chain, our value chain is literally mapped right onto other subsurface industries, again, such as mining and oil and gas. So for those of you who are not technical, but are more on the professional side, don't think there's not a role for you here as well. Again, the accountants, the legal, all of that is also needed to administer and run and grow our businesses.
Oh, that's such a great and important point, that technical is important for the field, obviously, but it's not, there's lots of other opportunities. So we have a couple of questions that have come in from participants, and kind of building on what this is, what do you feel are the most important skills needed for people to succeed in the clean energy sector? You've kind of tapped on probably similar skills to succeed in any sector, right? But do you have any answers for that?
Sorry, going back to myself?
Sure.
My quick answer is we quickly moved beyond the academic skills into the personality skills. So teamwork, resourcefulness, resiliency. It's then comes down to working well in a team, and I think that's good advice for everyone to realize that you can't excel in a box. You're going to be working with high productive teams, and developing those softer skills both inside university and out, through clubs. Dr. Nasser was talking about that as well. There's many opportunities to develop those interpersonal skills.
Excellent. And I think those are the skills that people tend not to think about. Dr. Nazir?
Yeah, my words on this, just be innovative. Okay, you have accumulated good experience, so be innovative. You're an engineer or you're a professional, things outside the box. Okay, create your own job. Okay, get together. You've been working in a team, so make a startup. Okay, this is the message that I keep telling for those who are coming back from oil and gas industry. Okay, innovation is the key, and I could see that innovation and technology development is the key in all disciplines, and it's going to be the key also for the future of oil and gas industry, not just the renewable energy. Okay, you can be innovative in your current discipline as well. Okay, I know it is very hard to shift and change culture, but innovation could be your vehicle for this change.
What a great point, especially right now during COVID. What we're seeing is everybody needs to be innovative, no matter what they're doing or where they're doing it or who they're doing it with. So thank you. I think that's a really important point to share. Now, the next question is, what is the process to become a member of CANG? I'm afraid I'm not familiar with it, so hopefully I'm pronouncing it correctly. Does anybody have an answer?
Evan, do you want to speak generally about the CANGIA, CANRIA, CANWIA, CANSIA?
Oh my goodness, so many.
Well, not as many now. I guess we're just down to CanREA, Canadian Renewable Energy Association, and CanGEA, the Geothermal Energy Association. So our memberships are typically focused, at least at the Canadian Renewable Energy Association, they're typically focused at the corporate level. We do have opportunities for membership of individual. If you check out our website at renewablessassociation.ca. But really there is, like I say, we're really driven by the corporate membership, and at corporate membership level, that's where you have the opportunity to participate in policy development, in the development of outreach programs and things like that. There is also an individual members level that you can check out on the website. And really what that does is provides you with the opportunity to get mailings or emailings from the association to let you know what we are doing, what kind of events we have going on. It gives you a reduced rate for events like our upcoming Renewable Energy Forum that's coming up in November, during years when we can actually get outside and spend time with each other. It gives you the opportunity to sign up for golf tournaments and the like. And it also allows you to kind of get an understanding, I think, of what is happening in the sector, highlights some job postings, but we also have a job posting board on our website that you can look at without being a member, and I encourage folks to take a look at that. But, the membership in our association is really a way for individuals to sign up as individuals to really, like I say, hear about what's happening in our sector. As well, there is an opportunity to sign up for a mailing list that does not require any kind of membership or any kind of membership fees. That if you're interested, I recommend that folks sign up for to get an idea of what's happening out there. But hopefully the opportunities for networking as a member will help folks with their job searches.
I am such a huge advocate for becoming part of a professional association. I know certainly the history that I've had in my field. Networking is essential, and that's how we usually hear about jobs and we learn about skills that we need to develop. So I would encourage everyone to search out and learn about these organizations. So thank you. I think what I'm going to do. Oh, okay.
Yeah, can I just add one other thing too? And I think beyond the association membership, one other thing to consider is Alison had talked about LinkedIn and participating in conversations and things there. I think that if that even sounds like it's a bit intimidating to participate in these conversations, check out groups like Clean Energy Canada or Canadian Renewable Energy Association or CanGEA on LinkedIn. Check out to see if they have mailing lists. These organizations are all in the business of promoting good news that's happening in the industry and promoting conversations. I think even if you are not, not participating in those conversations, just having those as part of, what kind of flips by you in the endless stream of information. It's going to be beyond what you're going to be able to see by looking at the newspaper, or it's also going to be more curated than if you're just following certain accounts on Twitter or on Facebook or whatever. If you go and just engage with these organizations on social media, it does some curation that makes a very rapidly changing sector a little bit more digestible. If you
Excellent.
get, there's always these breakthrough technologies that we see are happening, or you hear about what some of these moonshots look like. By looking at what CanREA or CanGEA or Clean Energy Canada are posting, you get an idea of what the industry is taking seriously. You're getting the idea of what organizations the industry is taking seriously, and I think it helps provide some context, because there's so much information out there. There's so much to wade through yourself. And this is a way to kind of have a swimming lesson so that you're not just, wading through all of this new information, and you can actually get somewhere rather
Very
than
good
kind of being in
advice.
one place overwhelmed by the water.
Hmm. Well, and also your name then becomes familiar. So if a job does come up, you might have an edge in that people know that you are interested, as Alison mentioned earlier, just showing that. I think I'm going to move into a little bit of technical kind of questions since I know nothing about this area. Um, Dr. Nazar, maybe I'll start with you. I thought Canada had lots of water. And so, why is water recycling becoming more of an issue in Canada than before? And what sorts of projects are you and your fellow researchers involved in that will help support this?
Well, if we need to think of water, water is the mother solvent, on Earth. Okay, and it is I can see it is used in everything. Okay, whether being as a source of a solvent for the industry, especially if we're talking about agriculture or oil and gas industry here in Alberta, in Canada, or even in the geothermal, okay, renewable energy industry. Typically, the industry, they are using this water because of the practical reasons. Okay, believe it or not, when they recycle the water, it is much cheaper than if they want to use a fresh water. Okay,
Oh,
this is one source. Another reason is, okay, it costs a lot when you are taking fresh water, because fresh water doesn't mean it's a clean water. It could be containing lots of minerals, okay, that could be causing a harm effect, okay, to the
oh,
reboilers or to the process that need to be used. In addition, remember, if you are ending up with a waste effluent, like a wastewater, you cannot just dump it back to the environment. It could having, a side effect on our environment, on the aquatic life, on our health as well, because it's going to come back to the end. Okay. So then this is what we need before we discharge it. We have to make sure, it is going back, as a clean water. Now, at the university or in the industry, actually, there are a lot of conventional and new developed technology for wastewater treatment. And this is most of my work rely on developing basically nanotechnology for cleaning up wastewater effluents. I will be talking about this, when it comes basically to how we integrate this technology, okay, with not just the wastewater treatment, even in the energy industry. Okay, but I don't want to deviate from the wastewater treatment in terms of the precious value of water. So I know Canada is rich in water. Maybe we are the number one in the world in terms of the water resources, but we have to value our resources. Okay.
right, right. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
There's a perception that clean energy and oil and gas are at odds. Are clean energy companies considering candidates from the oil and gas sector? I'll
Mhm.
leave that open to anyone. Okay, Evan.
Yeah, I would say that that is a real myth that the two sectors are at odds. Looking at our membership of the Canadian Renewable Energy Association, among our top members, we have organizations like Enbridge. We have Suncor, that is a big supporter of CanREA. We have Capital Power, TransAlta. I think that it is a myth that we are at odds. If you take a look at some of the biggest announcements that we have had in the renewable sector in the last year or so, you have Capital Power has announced large wind and solar facilities to complement their thermal fleet. We see now this was prior to COVID, but Suncor had a large 200 megawatt wind farm that they
Right.
had announced. And you also have the Claresholm Solar project. That is a project that is being built because TC Energy is buying all of the power. So I think we're we are in a world right now where wind is the lowest cost energy source that you can build in the province right now. Solar is not far behind. It's dropped by about 90% in the last 10 years, according to some analyses for the costs. You have the TIER program, which a large a large announcement was made yesterday from the government of Alberta's TIER program, and the TIER program, which puts a carbon price on large emitters, gives renewable energy facilities the opportunity to generate credits to sell to companies. You're seeing a lot of opportunities here because, quite frankly, renewables will reduce the costs of operations for oil and gas facilities. And so I think that there are real opportunities here for the fossil fuel industry to buy power from renewable facilities. And then the other thing to keep in mind is, we talk about the oil and gas sector. A lot of the oil that is coming from the oil sands is not used for electricity. It's used for transportation and petrochemicals and things like that. And the renewable sector is focused primarily on electricity. And electricity is an input into those processes.
Right.
So not only are they not competing, but there is an opportunity, I think, for the oil and gas sector to be a buyer of low cost renewable power. So I think that we are all part of the work that will continue to be done in Alberta here.
So very complimentary is what I'm hearing, which I believe was said earlier. Thank you. Okay. So you mentioned 2 large projects. Are there other large projects going on right now in Alberta that for the clean energy sector?
Yeah, so for the clean energy sector, for wind and solar, we do have a lot of projects that have come down the pipeline. And I can mention some of them here, but I'm sure I have forgotten some of them because there's just so many. So, and I would encourage people to take a look at majorprojects.alberta.ca. They have a list there of all the announced projects across anything that's basically cost more than $5 million that's been announced in the province. Majorprojects.alberta.ca tracks. And so you can look there. It has all sorts of power projects. It has all sorts of development, but there is a button that you can click for power. There's a button you can click for wind and solar. And in that case, there's thousands of megawatts of projects that are moving forward, primarily in the south and southeastern region of the province. That's where we have the best wind resource in the province and the best solar, and among the best wind and solar in the country. Very, very low cost there. So I would say that we have approximately between wind and solar, there's about 1,300 to 1,800 megawatts of new projects coming online, depending on how you count. If you look at the list of projects that are requesting connection analyses from the Alberta Electric System Operator, there's an additional 8 to 10,000 megawatts of projects in wind and solar. Not all of those are going to get built, but all of those are doing work in the province, whether that is, working on the permitting, working on pre-construction work, working on their site selection, working on their surveys for the environmental impacts, preparing their connection requests, looking for financing. Like I say, those projects are not all going to get built, but it really shows that Alberta is a place where people are focusing their attentions from all over the world to build projects.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Alison, may I ask you a question? Excuse me, in my research, I read you do brine mining projects. Could you tell me what that is and tell me a little bit about where they're taking place and are there jobs?
Sure. Brine mining is also referred to as ethical mining because the footprint or the land disturbance is very small. So if you compare it to open pit mining for precious metals that are used in the technology industry or underground mining, brine mining is simply drilling the equivalent of geothermal wells anywhere from 2 to 5 kilometers and using either the natural reservoir water or water from the surface to flush out the minerals that are present. And therefore, the footprint is extremely small, and it becomes more of a separation, a facility separation technology at the surface. So these projects are getting started in Alberta through companies like E3 Metals. It's a publicly traded company. You can look them up. Projects like this are already underway in California and in Europe. And if I may, if just go back to that fossil fuel industry question that Evan answered. Evan focused naturally on the electricity side of things. Of course, geothermal can provide both heat and electricity. My answer to his question is a bit more provocative. When we're displacing heating products such as natural gas, those oil and gas companies, unless they're kind of well on their way, such as a BP or an international company, into thinking about an energy transition, it's I think it's pretty scary and perhaps provide some roadblocks along the way for geothermal heating to get into the market when natural gas is such a large presence in our province. Right. And if you think all the way back up to the politics of it, without a tax base, we have royalties. And oil and gas pay a substantial amount of royalties for all of us to enjoy the things that we do in Alberta and the country. And as of yet, there aren't enough geothermal projects to attract royalties that would be paid into the government coffers. So our answer, it's a bit more market-wise, complicated societal problems that need to be addressed, and which one has a higher value. But that's not to speak to the abundance of geothermal resource, of the technology available, and the skilled workforce in Alberta. We can do this. We just need to make different decisions at that policy level.
Excellent. Okay. Now I have a question saying that this person's understanding is there's no electricity generated presently from geothermal. And what do you think the potential is here in Canada in terms of energy sources and uptake from the government and from private investors? So you kind of mentioned right now there's not a great vision maybe on the part of the government, but do you see that changing, or what is required to change that view?
Sure, no, I wouldn't say the government doesn't have a vision. They've been very constructive to work with the industry, both when the NDP were in power and the Conservative parties now. There's a real will to try to get this industry going because it is a transition, and as well as the skilled workforce. Alberta, though, from an electricity point of view, has a deregulated market. As Evan was saying, the prices for wind and solar to compete in the market are much easier than a geothermal project, which, a lot like a coal plant, a hydro plant, or a nuclear plant, has a very, very high upfront cost. Zero operating going forward, essentially, and runs 24/7, so lots of contributions of those megawatt hours. But we need a higher power price to participate in this market. So there may be other provisions, such as, again, the carbon credits, or provisions for if you're redeploying people into skilled workforce, that may warrant a higher power price. But I think the heating market has lower barriers to entry, less technology required, less deep wells, certainly less facilities. You don't need a power plant. I mean, those are the types of things that I think are going to be the vision for Alberta, with a lower power price, in Saskatchewan and BC as well. We can certainly do geothermal electricity projects. I'm not sure we're going to get to the vision that CanGeo once had of 5,000 megawatts across Canada for electric. I think we can easily surpass that when we're talking about heating projects.
Thank you. Dr. Nazar, is there anything you'd like to add to the previous question about?
Yeah. If I need to add anything here, I would be adding, like, we need to work toward, public awareness, okay, of these types of emerging technology. Okay, we need to understand, basically, okay, if we are going to switch gear and, try to look into this new technology, okay, what is the benefit? Not just for us in terms of a dollar value, but also in terms of our environment. Okay, if we're looking at it from that perspective, okay, that doesn't mean if I need to look at the fossil-based technology as, I don't want to be looking at it as, a dirty technology. and the contrary. Those, as I mentioned from the beginning, those sources of energy actually are in high demand for the future. If we look at the future energy outlook, we can see that within 50 years to come, okay, all around the world, not just basically in Canada, population is increasing, our technology is advancing, quality of life is improving, so there will be huge demand, okay, on energy. So we need all the type of energy.
Right.
Okay. Moving to geothermal energy, that doesn't mean we are abandoning, the conventional fossil fuel-based energy or any other type of energy. Now, if we need to think of it in terms of public awareness here, we need to think of it in terms of, how the public can basically, be contributing toward this, change, if I want to use this word, okay, to adapt this basically new technology. Maybe in the rural area, this is, a more, applicable, especially for the places where, they are more dependent on LPG, or where we have to transport basically the fuel. You could be having a small scale geothermal energy, okay, where it can be applied in situ or in a place, okay, rather than try to truck or railway basically their fuel supply. Okay. So public awareness, I would be expecting, is one of the key things that we need to look at, is not just forcing the government basically toward the change.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And it seems like there are oil and gas companies that are using geothermal energy to generate some of their own energy. Is that true?
There's
Yes.
certainly projects around the world that are doing that, and some that are trying to do that in Alberta now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Because
perfect.
it is a source. Yeah. Sorry. It is if I can add here, especially the geothermal energy is a source basically for steam generation. Okay,
Right.
it could be like in comparison of the carbon footprint, it is much cleaner basically than if you want to burn natural gas, for example, to generate steam, like the classical way of doing it. Okay.
Right. There's a really great video on Netflix around Iceland and their geothermal power
Yeah.
development. That's all I know about that. Okay. So there are lots of stories right now in the news and during the current political elections about the transportation of, oil, bitumen, gas, carbon, etc. What role are researchers, technology, and industry doing to improve the situation? Anyone
I think
want to
Dr.
take that one on?
Sure. I think
Yeah.
Dr. Nasser just mentioned distributed energy generation, local energy, which also helps the communities have local employment. I mean, that is an alternative to transported fuels. And you spoke about that eloquently.
Mm.
Okay.
If I need to look, my take into this, like speaking of the oil industry, so whether we like it or not, okay, oil is an important part for the Canadian economy, and this is how we make our revenue basically to pay for our rent, the thing that we need to look at it here when it comes basically to oil and gas industry with the current process, especially the Canadian practice, it is highly expensive. Okay, so we need to think, instead of abandoning this, resources or rich resources, we need to think of innovative new technology that is greener, cheaper, easy to be handled for extracting these sources. So we can basically compete, okay, at the international level. At the current level or at the national level, we are doing great, but we cannot, compete, at the international level. Why? Because our production cost is very high. So we have to integrate the university with the industry in a sense that the industry should invest in the R&D, should invest on, conducting more research on how we can bring, our production costs down, okay, on how we can find, other application, non-combustion approach, okay, or technology for the use of the oil that we have. Why we need to use this oil mainly to end up as CO2? We could be using this oil for other application. For example, can be integrated in the production of carbon fibers, carbon nanotubes, which are needed for the renewable energy. Renewable energy need, a material for, storing the energy. And now they're highly demanding on the carbon fibers, carbon nanotubes. At the same time, if we look at how nature are producing or treating its waste, especially the agriculture-based material, what we see it converted into fertilizer. The same things. This oil is a carbon-based material. It can be easily converted to a fertilizer. It can be integrated with the agriculture industry. So we have to be, as I mentioned to my audience here, be innovative. Also, we have to be innovative too in finding a new application, finding a new technology for our fuel resources.
Thank you. Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. Evan, a question for you. Why is the expansion of Canada's energy mix important to both Canadians and to the Canadian economy? That's a pretty big question.
Yeah, I think that the expansion of the Canadian energy mix is important because just like any other kind of investments that are being made, like having a diversity in your investments, a diversity in your portfolio, future proofs you against shocks in the future. So you have this, as I said before, renewables, specifically wind and solar is getting there, are the lowest cost ways to build new electricity in the province of Alberta, for instance. And one thing that is, not only is it low cost, but there is really no volatility in the energy source itself in the same way that there is with say like natural gas, or which is where the other part of the electricity sector is transitioning. As coal comes offline, it's being replaced by wind, solar, storage, geothermal, natural gas. But you have this diversity of electricity sources, and you can drive down the volatility in your costs because you don't have a fuel source that is a commodity that is exposed to market pressures from all over the world. And then the other thing is just, there is the climate crisis that we are going through, and it is important to decarbonize our electricity system to ensure that we are not further exacerbating the climate crisis by emitting carbon into the atmosphere that we don't need to be emitting into the atmosphere. So the more wind and solar that we put on the grid, the less carbon that we are emitting, and I think that that's going to be a critical part of reaching the government's goals of getting to net zero emissions in the country, and renewables will help us get there, and a diversity of energy sources will get us there as well.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to answer that question? Nobody's jumping up and down. Okay. Why is Canada a good location for geothermal projects, Alison?
Well, if you think about the global industry, there's at least one project that's over 200 years old, and many others that are over 50 years old. And so the global industry has developed and built, and Canada has not. And given our geology and our geography and where people live, it being such a cold climate, even the lowest temperature geothermal could heat a room that you're in right now. And certainly we have a quality geothermal that has not been developed, again, like these other countries have developed their good resources. We still have our good resources left before we even have to start looking at some of the lower quality resources. So it really is like coming across a new gas field or a new oil field. I mean, these are new reservoirs that have not been used. And the best part about the reservoirs, of course, is that they're renewable, and the more you use them, they just keep on going. And so it really is a nascent industry, ripe for technology improvements that the global projects haven't deployed. You know, we have those skill sets here to do projects better, and we still have the big elephants, these big reservoirs that have yet to been developed.
Okay, well, that leads into another question we've received. There are several GT pilot projects in Canada. If we have the funding today, would we have a full-scale commercial and operating geothermal energy source that will slowly become more mainstream? In other words, is funding and public interest the main roadblocks, not the tech or geo source?
I mean, definitely, always funding helps. There is subsurface risk, like mining and oil and gas. You'd like some government help to get over that risk. Then the developer and the private sector can take over. But it really comes down to what Evan was speaking about, you know, the actual markets. What are people prepared to pay? What are we prepared to pay to have that clean generation, be it heat or electricity? Some of our provinces have very different market price signals. And so it remains to be seen if geothermal will be fully developed. It does require that off-taker as well. And therefore the prices need to be attractive for developers, be it the government themselves or industry, to go forward.
Okay, thank you. What technology is at the forefront of energy storage? Where are the growth areas?
Yeah, I can answer that. I think that energy storage is going to be or is a really exciting part of the electricity sector, and I think it's particularly exciting. And I know it sounds like I'm dodging the question here, but I'm just trying to set it up, set up the answer a little bit. But you know, in Alberta, we're going to see, I think, a lot of innovation in storage because Alberta, unlike any of the other provinces in Canada, Alberta is the only province with a real market-based approach. We have what's called an energy-only market here. The rest of the other provinces, except for Ontario, have kind of crown utilities, which are top-down. That kind of, you have the government deciding what kind of energy comes online and how we get our electricity. And in Alberta, it's basically the government has committed to allowing anyone who wants to sell power and anyone that can build a power plant and take that risk to connect to the grid and sell energy on an hourly basis. But then as well, the wires or the transmission and distribution is regulated. It's private companies deliver it, but it's regulated so that, you know, if the province decides through the Alberta Electric System Operator that we need more transmission, that will be you know, that's just decided by government, and they instruct the private wires owners to build it. And energy storage is interesting because there are applications that it can provide on the energy market. You can use energy storage to just buy power from the market to charge, and it can sell power to the market to provide power to people who need it. But then as well, energy storage, you know, there is this opportunity for energy storage to replace the construction of new wires, because typically new wires need to be built so that everyone can sell to the system. Sometimes the wires get full and you need to build new wires, but energy storage could be connected at a certain place to reduce the need to build new wires because they will buy the power rather than trying to sell it to the system. So there's all these different uses of batteries, and where it gets interesting is not only are there different uses, but there's different battery technology, or storage technology rather. There's chemical batteries. There is compressed air, where you have underground caverns that you are pumping filled with air in order to store energy. You're compressing it underground, or in another kind of container. Alberta, typically you can look underground because we have caverns underground. So you pump the oxygen, or you pump the air underground when you don't need energy, and then when you need energy, you generate it with the compressed air. You can do the same with pumping water up a hill to store it, and then you let it go down the hill to generate power through a turbine. You have flywheels, which are mechanical batteries that you basically tighten up when you are storing, and then you let go to generate power afterwards. There's all these different kinds of technology. They have different, some can charge up faster, and some discharge faster, can be turned on very quickly, and some need extra time to be turned on. And where Alberta is the open market, rather than having the government decide which of these are better, people can make the investment to decide, well, do we need something that responds quickly because we are trying to balance the power, or do we have a little bit more time so we can potentially just sell the power? And whatever those decisions are, hydro batteries react very quickly when they're charged. So if you need power quickly, if that's what the Alberta market needs, that's what we will see. Batteries that are chemical batteries perhaps don't discharge quite as quickly as hydropower does. But if it turns out that we don't need a lot of quick response here in Alberta, you may see chemical batteries become more popular. So this is not my way of avoiding the answer. It's more saying that I think that Alberta is going to be a laboratory to find out which way to move forward. And then one other thing I'll say is, the batteries I've just talked about they're primarily batteries that service the power grid itself and enhance the flexibility or reliability of the power grid. The other way we're going to see batteries is kind of at the base of a wind farm or at the base of a solar farm, in order to help wind and solar facilities kind of control when they're able to put power on the grid, and maybe take advantage of more opportune pricing in the market. But again, this is going to be driven by the fact that we have an open market here in Alberta. And the short answer now, I guess, is we just have to wait and see. And Alberta is going to be the place where we figure that out.
Oh, excellent. Anyone else would like
Yeah.
to build on that?
Yes, if I can build on that, like if we need to look at the, current, energy storage system is mainly the batteries and capacitors. Am I right? But if we need to look at where the future is driving us here, is driving us toward nanotechnology. I believe nanotechnology is going to be a key player on energy storage. Okay, reason being is, as I mentioned, the carbon nanotubes are becoming an alternative for the graphite based electrodes, and reason because they are having a high surface area, which is one of the things that you need for the storage in terms of capacity, and also they are highly conductive. Okay, and the other thing, they are much better than the conventional, aluminum based wiring systems. So in that case, you have less resistance, okay, in terms of whether you are storing the energy or transferring, the energy. There is a lot of research that's been carrying now on replacing a solvent-based battery into a solid-state battery, okay, in terms of the environmental issue and in terms of basically improving, the capacity. I see a lot of opportunity here, okay, in terms of those who are thinking of a startup companies to think of, developing these types of batteries where you integrate, the nanotechnology with the conventional, batteries. It's not like you want to abandon the conventional batteries. No, nanotechnology can be enabled in these, conventional technology. Where I can give an example. For example, storage of solar thermal energy can basically enhance, but just by using, medium enriched with nanoparticles. You can use your current medium, but you can maximize the capacity by integrating it with the nanoparticles.
Wow. Okay. So much potential in the future. I think this is really exciting to be part of a field that, as you say, innovation and creativity is really what's required here. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, when I first did my research, I said that there were 298,000 positions in Canada in this field. Where do you think it will go from here? Does anybody have a guess in terms of job creation?
I mean, from our perspective, our industry, I don't have those kind of macro countrywide numbers, but our industry, on a per megawatt basis, be it electricity or heat, employs more people, and especially at the local level, than the fossil fuels. And so while it's 100% mapping of industry over to geothermal, we actually employ more as well, again, per energy output. So that sounds like it makes us more inefficient. However, again, with the zero operating fuel cost, we're able to afford to have those extra jobs in our projects. So I think that the future looks very bright to not only redeploy, transition younger workers right into the industry to begin with, but we shouldn't be fearful about losing jobs. Developing our energy, as Evan was speaking about as well, underpins all kinds of different market opportunities for export and for manufacturing, and we can grow all kinds of the parts of the economy by having stable, secure, non-emitting and low-cost energy in Canada. You can't have too much energy.
Wow, that is really impressive and certainly good news for all the people that are on this webinar, to know that job creation is a byproduct of doing something great for our environment. Anyone else want to?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. For me, I could see an opportunity for the natural gas being labeled as a bridging fuel, okay, between the fossil fuel and the renewable energy. Reason being because of it is hydrogen content. So if you need the hydrogen for the fuel cell, the question becomes from where you want to give the hydrogen. So natural gas would be, a major player in the renewable energy as a hydrogen source, okay, for the applicant. So I would see a technology for converting natural gas or for production of hydrogen from natural gas, okay, as a fuel that we needed, in the renewable energy. I could see also those positions being taken on, converting, the fossil fuel into a new product. Okay, there is a lot of, research being done in this direction or start to being, carried out in this direction on how we can produce a value-added product from those, types of resources. So there is some job opportunity could be in that direction as well.
Thank you. Evan?
Yeah, and I would just add, like Alison, I don't have a large scale projection on what the size of the opportunity is in the sector, but looking at about 100 megawatt or so wind farm, or 100 megawatt or per 100 megawatts of wind, or per 100 megawatts of solar. You're looking at between 100 and 200 full-time equivalent jobs on those construction sites, and then about a dozen or so to maintain that 100 megawatt chunk. Now, that the reason I give that is a pretty broad range, but it really depends. Is this a 100 megawatt project, or are we talking about 100 megawatts in a 400 megawatt project? And those, there's just different economies of scale there. But if a large utility scale project comes to your community, you're talking about 100 to 200 jobs per 100 megawatts. And then with solar, thinking about rooftop solar, whether that is we call it rooftop solar, that could be ground-based as well. But a solar facility that either powers your home or powers your powers your community center or something like that. 1 megawatt of rooftop solar, which is about 120 homes or 10 commercial or community facilities. That's about 20 full-time jobs to put that 1 megawatt or install that 1 megawatt of that 1 megawatt of solar. We don't have equivalent numbers for wind because typically wind is not installed on that scale. Solar is very solar is very scalable. It just depends on the number of solar panels you have. You can put a few solar panels on a roof to power a home, or you can put hundreds of thousands of solar panels in a field to power a community. Whereas, wind facilities, the smallest turbine that people are using now would power 1,200 homes. So that's a lot for someone to, Alison says you can't have too much energy. You may be able to have too much energy in your backyard, however. So people typically don't have large turbines installed, and solar is really the way to go on that.
Well, people complain about cell towers, so I imagine they would complain about having a wind a wind turbine in their backyard. So,
well,
we understand that point.
It's interesting. It's interesting you say that, though, Lynn, because I feel like I'm very lucky to work in the wind and solar sector in Alberta because here in Alberta, folks who have the space because they're farmers or they work in agriculture, typically are used to the idea of monetizing their property, right? Like if you have a farm that is actually your livelihood, you're used to doing whatever you can to get revenues from that land. And by having a wind farm, a wind turbine there, or a solar farm there, that's basically someone else investing in your property to provide you with a steady income. So actually, in a lot of cases, landowners are pretty welcoming. I field calls quite often from farmers in Alberta and Saskatchewan who say, how do I get a wind farm on my land? My neighbor's got one. He's making so much money. I want that opportunity too. And so it's a pretty, people, like I say, people are used to monetizing their land. They're used to having pipeline right-of-ways or other kinds of facilities on their land. And they're used to it. They know what questions to ask, and they know how to make themselves feel comfortable. And then the benefit with wind and solar is that there is no Surface Rights Act in place. There is no requirement that you do host a wind or solar farm, so you can say no. So if you can say no, it really gives the incentive for developers to do what you want. So if you don't feel like you're getting enough of a rent payment, you can say no. If you don't feel comfortable with the plans for what happens at the end of life, you can say no. So typically relationships with landowners are very productive here in Alberta, and I feel quite fortunate for that.
Excellent. Well, and I can certainly see that rural. In my mind, I was visualizing, in the city of Calgary, we're having a problem with chicken, whether we can have chickens in our backyard. That's all. Okay, so thank you. Thank you. Canada is a world leader in environmental protection standards, demonstrated by the complexity of our environmental regulations. Is regulatory uncertainty a barrier to commercial investment in renewable energy development? And what is the conversation that needs to happen to change that, if that is true? So perhaps, Alison, maybe start with you.
Sure. CanGEA, like the CanWea and CanSEA before us, we've been able to influence and change laws, regulations, both at the federal and provincial levels. These are things that need to happen, which is why there's industry associations. You need to have that constructive advocacy. Unfortunately, there still are regulatory changes that need to be either put into place or some that need to be modified or or amended because it's not working the way it was maybe envisioned when regulations were implemented. And that's just a reflection of how nascent the industry is. So, for example, just last week, there is a BC law that changed. Up until a week ago, owning a geothermal permit didn't give you any rights to consultation or accommodation if somebody built on top of you. Well, you can imagine if somebody's building on top of you, how do you drill your wells? But these are more oversights in regulations that they're put into place and never actually tested by development. So I see that as more development is progressing, there'll be more amendments or more co-creation to support industry and to provide that investor certainty.
Thank you. Anyone else want to?
Yeah, I would just say overall, when it comes to wind and solar, we're regulated by a handful of different agencies in Alberta only. We really don't have federal oversight, and kind of like Alison says, it's a matter of, in some cases, such as in BC, just kind of fixing or improving some issues kind of in the margins. Alberta has had utility scale wind projects developed here since the mid 90s. The regulators are pretty comfortable with it. I think the industry has done a lot of work over the last, say, 5 to 10 years to really work on reducing impacts on certain on certain species and things like that. And I think that there is a real knowledge, both in government and in industry, how to reduce any impacts of the sector, and the rules that are in place, by and large, really do reflect those practices. And I think, like I say, there's always improvements you can make. When the government of Alberta announced that they were on a red tape reduction initiative, like, I did get a handful of issues that members wanted to deal with, but we've been kind of ticking off that to-do list. It's mostly been about changing the rules so that they reflect the more modern technology. Some of these things were written when the sector was starting out, and some changes that need to be done to reflect like what you're actually working with now and reflect the best practices of the sector. And but I think by and large, folks are pretty happy. There's 8,000 megawatts or so of wind and solar in the queue. Again, not all of those are going to get built, but it speaks to a competition, and I don't think we would have that kind of competition if people didn't think, oh, Alberta is a place where you can do business.
Right. Thank you. So the last, one of the, oh, sorry. Yes, Dr. Nazir.
Yeah, if I can add here in terms of, Canadian perspective, like wind and solar energy, like it's a new energy. And like any new energy, they have their own advantages and the drawbacks, if we need to think of it in terms of, a larger scale. So then regulation is going to be coming, from the experience. Okay, so I don't see that this is like, regulation written in stone. I would be expecting that changes is possible. Okay, especially if we look at the public acceptance, okay, of this new technology. Okay, so the government, will be looking into, making new regulations. Okay, in terms of, implementing such technology. And I see the grass is green basically here in Alberta, especially because now oil and gas industry start accepting, integrating the renewable energy, okay, within their own, industry sectors.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. To be full circle, what R&D work is being done on recycling batteries and the infrastructure that's no longer being used? Are there companies out there that are doing this type of work already? Does anyone
there
have an answer?
is work. Yeah, there is work that is being done, particularly in the case of wind, work being done on blades and how those get recycled at end of life. So there is research being done on that. Research being done on the treatment of batteries after they come to the end of their design life, or when they come to the end of the expected life. This is on a bit of a smaller scale, but there are companies, for instance, that will take batteries from electric cars, and they can refurbish them and repackage them so that they can be batteries in people's houses, because batteries in people's houses are typically used as backup rather than a primary
Right.
provider of electricity. So you don't need to get 300 kilometers or 250 kilometers worth of charge on a battery that's bolted in your basement. It's about, like, if the power goes out, do you have something to get you through a couple of hours of having your microwave and your oven and your TV and your Wi-Fi and things like that. So there is work that is being done on that. I think that will continue to be work. But I will say that when it comes to a solar facility or a wind facility, there's opportunities to recycle the glass that would be in a solar facility. There's a lot of salvage value in recycling a wind farm. There's a lot of steel in that. And there's also a long design life at this point. You're talking about a 35-year investment. And at the end of life of some of these projects, we do what's called repowering. There is opportunity to put new turbines on top of the towers in some cases, depending on how big a turbine we're talking about. And there's going to be a lot of interesting work being done on that. Here in Alberta, we've only had one project that's been decommissioned. And by the way, decommissioning plans are required by the Alberta Utilities Commission to get a license to operate. But we've had one project that's been decommissioned. In California, in Europe, we're going to start to see more, because those projects are coming to the end of their design life. It is the time to figure out, what do we do with this? And so I think that Alberta is going to be the beneficiary of, starting the build out at a large scale a little bit later, because all of these lessons are going to be learned in other jurisdictions. And say the Whitlaw 1 project came online in December of 2019. It's got probably a 30 years ahead of it. So in December of 2039, when that project is due for decommissioning, or 2049, sorry, there's going to be answers to these questions, I think. So
Excellent. Thank you.
and
So,
large scale solar, same thing, like 35 years from now.
right. So when we say there's 298,000 jobs in Canada, there's all kinds of potential to build new jobs, because we will need people to be working on some of these problems in the future. So once again, we kind of come back to what we talked about. Innovation and creativity is really going to be important as we move forward. So as we're drawing to a close here, I would like to just speak to those individuals that are our audience, and I want you to think about, what are you going to do next? So one question that we did have was, are there opportunities for volunteering within this sector? So if people could share thoughts on that. You've already given us thoughts on how do we gain more information, but what about the actual hands-on kind of volunteering and getting dirty?
Maybe I'll start with that. Because of COVID-19, it's become more difficult to volunteer at a large event or a conference. I mean, those were always great places to have students and youths and people transitioning into the industry. I think the liking and the sharing and the constructive comments on the news streams that Evan was speaking about, that is a form of volunteering that's very helpful. And Lynn, as you mentioned, their names would become familiar to the industry as well. So those are some ideas that I have. Currently, Cangia is hiring a policy director, and my company, Borealis GeoPower, is hiring an accountant. So beyond volunteering, there's actual jobs, as we've all been talking about, not just in the future, but currently in the industry. So I would recommend that people look at the companies in the supply chain, look at the associations, and see what might fit well for them. Volunteering for field work, being a citizen scientist, that sometimes happens in geothermal, but as you can imagine, you do need insurance for these types of things. It's not that straightforward to provide technical service or professional services from a volunteer point of view.
Yeah, I would add, I don't think that through our association that there are typically opportunities for volunteering, and definitely appreciate definitely appreciate people who do want to offer their time like that. I would say one thing that hasn't come up, there is, if you are located in Calgary, there is an event, and this is on hiatus now due to COVID-19, but there is a group on meetup.com called the Green Beers Meetup that is worth attending. Typically what they do is have monthly nights where someone will come and do a presentation about the work they're doing in the industry. And then there's probably about 35 or 40 folks that are there. There's a networking opportunity at the front and the back of the meeting. I would say to people, take a look for that. Like I say, it's on hiatus now, but that is that's one option. I would say as well, as far as things go on LinkedIn or any of these groups, I would say don't be shy to send a note to people to ask, if they are interested in having a conversation or a coffee. I think that in the renewable energy sector, like Alison said, it's a lot of people for whom this is important work and they're excited to talk about it. And so I would say, don't be shy to reach out to people. People will give you their time. I will say, don't necessarily abuse their time. If we are, able to meet in person again, make sure you're the person buying the coffee if you've invited someone out to have this conversation.
Oh, you sound like a career coach.
And be specific about what you're messaging about. It's sometimes if someone reaches out and says, hey, I just want to pick your brain about renewables, that's kind of one that has a pretty big answer, and I'm just not going to get to that one quickly. Right. But if you're going to say, hey, I heard about this project I heard about this project that's being built in Claresholm, can we talk about it? Or if you have a question about supply chain or something like that, that is, I think that is something that is going to catch people's attention, more easily, and folks will typically be interested in having that conversation.
Thank you so much for saying that, because I think that's so important for us. Dr. Nazar, yes?
If I can add here to this, you can look into a number of government-funded program. Okay, so if you want to do some volunteering in the industry, there are, I think, I'm aware of 3 programs. One of them is called I2I, which is Idea to Innovate, where you and your industrial partner can, think up of an idea, and then, industrial partner doesn't need to put any cash funding here. They want to show that we accept this idea to implement it. The fund can be through the government. There is another program called IRAP, which is, I think, Industrial Research Assistance Program, which is again the integration industry with with innovation. And there is another program called MITAX, okay, MITACS, which is again similar to that. Bring your idea, okay, with an industrial partner. The industrial partner just need to show in-kind contribution, okay, no cash. The cash can be coming from the program, okay. So, and there are also others as well that coming again from the government. Look into these, and you can contact me if you are interested, so I can direct you to other programs as well, where you just bring your idea, and I'm sure you're coming with a good background, especially for those who were in the engineering background. And you could see it now. There is a lot of opportunity waiting for you, whether it's been in the recycle industry, in the innovation, okay, in the application, okay, where you can bring, or make a startup company basically to, implement your idea.
Thank you so much. And I think, Annabella, that answered your question. So that we're finished questions now. So I'm hoping that Brian, who is our tech extraordinaire, will be putting up a poll in the next few minutes. And our question is, how many people are currently employed in Canada in this field of clean energy? And I have to tell you, I don't know if you noticed, but I mentioned it several times throughout this whole presentation. And on the poll, we would ask you to put your answer, put your name, and put your email. And after this webinar is over, we will then contact the lucky winner so that you get this gift prize, or gift card. So I would like to just say thank you. Alison, you won. No. I just want to say for myself, thank you very much. And I understand that Chris is going to come back on. Hopefully his technology is fixed, and say a few words.
Sounds good. Hopefully this is working for everybody. Yes, there we go. Thank you. So my apologies again from the technology side on this side for earlier this morning, but hopefully we've got it all fixed up and ready to go for everyone at this point in time. First things I wanted to do was, on behalf of the board of directors at the Talent Pool, which I'm one of them, we wanted to thank you for attending the first of our 6-week webinar series that's going to be online. For all of you that have attended in the past, you know that what we're going to be doing is very similar to what we saw today. We're going to have great panelists, great discussions, a great chance for you guys to ask questions and look for opportunities about what's going on and what's happening. For all of you that haven't attended in the past, we're welcoming you on board right now. Thank you for joining with us here, and we look forward to having you here over our next 5 sessions, which we've got another one going on next Wednesday, and we'll continue on with it from there. I wanted to thank everybody today for taking part. First of all, our panelists, Alison, Evan, Dr. Nasser, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedules to provide insights to us on all of this great information and stuff like this. We know the job seekers and the people that are online today are greatly appreciative of what you've been able to tell them. So thank you very much, and thank you for providing the opportunity for what is going on in your industries and your sectors in terms of growth and potential. Because I think for a lot of people out here, as Lynn mentioned during the presentation, a lot of people need to hear that message that there are opportunities out there and there is going to be growth, and to be talking about your industries and your sectors is extremely helpful to a lot of people. So thank you for taking the time. To Lynn Berry, our moderator, thank you again. For all of you who know, Lynn is awesome at doing these types of things and has worked well with us over the years to kind of set this up and get things going. So greatly appreciated with it from there. We want to send a thank you out to Dan, Brian, Christian, Kathy, and the rest of their technical team over at E3 and Together by Tribe. Thank you for putting this all together and making this work for us here, because we know how to do these things face to face, but online, we need your background. We need your background and experience to make that work. To Brandon, Farah, Ashley, and Elia, who make these events work for us at Talent Pool, thank you very much for the time and effort that you guys put into this. To our event partners, Talent Needs for the Evolving Energy Ecosystem, Workforce Strategies International, and the Mature Worker Action Team Project, thank you for taking part and letting your people that you've been working with, letting them know about these events. To our event sponsor, the Government of Alberta. Without their support, not take place. Thank you for putting that together and getting that all set up. Okay. And finally, a big thanks to all of you for attending today. It's always appreciated that you attend these events, so thank you. I also wanted to encourage everyone to follow Talent Pool on social media, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. You'll see the links listed on the PowerPoints that are going to be showing here at the end of the session. So make sure that you get a chance to take it and get it set up with it from there. And finally, I wanted to advise you of another additional webinar that we're going to be holding with our partners at Talent Needs for the Evolving Energy Ecosystem on October the 14th at 10 a.m. A registration link will be sent to all of you after the event today. And if you haven't attended a job seeker session with Pat and Cheryl with Talent Needs for the Evolving Energy Ecosystem in the past, we do encourage you to attend with it on this side here. The other thing you're going to notice up on your PowerPoints at the end here as well is a job fair coming up, scheduled for November the 18th. We're going to be taking registration shortly, and you'll be able to see the posters and everything up with it from there as well. So with that, wanted to thank everybody again for taking the time and for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you next Wednesday, same time, 9 o'clock in the morning till about 10:30 or so. And once again, thank you for everybody for taking part, and thank you to our great panelists, our moderators, and everyone that's been involved with making today a success. Thank you very much. Have yourself a great day, and we will talk to all of you soon. And don't forget, make sure you sign up for that question and register for the prize if you would like to enter. Okay, thank you very much. Have a great day. And Brian, with that, we will end it today. Thanks very much.